Welcome to my channel, Acids and Gases. Today I'm going to process 543 grams of RAN figures that came from retired servers. The company that came from was going to pay somebody to take them away. I went ahead and took those for free, along with the free gold that came with them. Alright, so we're going to get started by using dilute nitric acid to remove the gold foils. Here we got our fingers. We're going to go put those in a 2500 milliliter beaker. And we're going to add some distilled water. You're going to measure out 200 milliliters of nitric acid. I'm going to put this up on the burner, turn on our fume scrubber, and then go ahead and add our nitric acid. Turn on the heat a little bit, add our nitric acid, and with the distilled water, and start our reaction. And you can see it's almost an instantaneous reaction. We start to produce some NOx fumes. Go ahead and get that covered. So let's go ahead and look at the scrubber in action. You can see over here that that first beaker per scrubber is getting some fumes, but all the rest of those fumes are being scrubbed out by the solution, and we have nothing coming through after that. So as we come back to the reaction, we can see there are some fumes coming out from under the sides of my watch glass, which is really just a cheap plate got at the thrift store. It doesn't fit this particular beaker very well. Definitely one of the things to consider when you're using a scrubber setup like this is your watch glasses really need to fit and seal the beaker everywhere except for the spout. But as we see, fume production is kind of falling off a little bit here. We'll take a look at it, stir it around a little bit, see if the foils are coming off. It looks like a good chunk of them, probably 90% of them have already released. Just cover that back up. See, it's still producing some fumes, so there's still some base metals in there. We're not really trying to get rid of all of them, but we want to get rid of most of them. We're going to go ahead and add another 100 milliliters of nitric. So we'll let this reaction continue until the fumes stop producing. Then we're going to collect those gold foils for further processing. First, we'll go ahead and pull our nitric oil off of the heat. Make sure it's cooled sufficiently. It has. Rinse everything down here, rinse all of the solids off of the sides. Then what we're going to do is pour the solution and try to keep as much of the gold in the beaker, but pour the solution in this pitcher here. Some of the foils will come over, and that's okay, but we want to keep the majority of it in the pitcher. Once we've poured off the majority of it, we're going to rinse it down with distilled water. Do 2 or 3 distilled water rinses to get as much of the copper nitrate out of there and over into the pitchers that we have it rinsed off. We're going to go ahead and filter the solution so we can capture any of those foils that did come over during the rinses, so that we can be sure we don't lose that gold from our final yield. So we'll go ahead and set up our vacuum process. We'll get our funnel and vacuum flask. We'll get the pump over here, get it all hooked up, and filter the solution. Well, that's filtering. We're going to go ahead and get the gold foils off of the fingers themselves from what's left in the beaker here. This, we're going to pour them into this colander sitting on top of a 5-gallon bucket. Kind of get everything rinsed out and into the colander. And what we're going to do is we're essentially going to rinse the foils off the fingers down into the bucket and leave the fingers in the colander to dispose of. Right, all the fingers and foils are out of the beaker. So using the power washer attachment for our garden hose, I'm going to have and wash the loose foils off the fingers down into the bucket on a relatively low setting at first until we get most of them in there. Then we're going to blast it and start knocking the stubborn ones off. So it looks like we got most of them, but we kind of toss it around. There's still some hiding underneath there. Get in there, flip it over. You can see plenty of foil still in there, so we'll keep blasting away. Get our hand in there, kind of work our way through them, knock them down until we don't see any foils left on the fingers. So we've gotten all of our gold foils off of the fingers. We'll go ahead and set the fingers aside. Look in our bucket and you can see the foils mostly have settled on the bottom. A couple of fingers have come through the colander. We'll catch those. It'll be easy to fish out as we go forward. But for the most part, this bucket has gold and some floaters of fiberglass that we'll be dealing with. See, it's settled nicely here. Gonna bring over a second bucket and decant off the majority of the liquid. Go ahead and transfer the foils in the bucket into our beaker. Then we'll go ahead and decant off this second bucket, capture any of the foils that came over for the first decant, and make sure we get that. That should get us 99.9% of the possible gold into our beaker for the next step. All right, our other solution has finished filtering. I'll get this unhooked and get the pump out of our way. What we're going to do is we're going to pull this down and we're going to rinse these gold foils out of the funnel off the filter paper into our beaker for further processing. We could just dump the whole filter in there, but that's going to bring along all the gunk that's on it, and it just takes a little more to dissolve that. This is easy enough. When I'm spraying, I do knock some underneath, so just make sure I don't have any stragglers. So we get it all into our beaker and we will be ready to go with our Aqua Regia. We'll be using Aqua Regia to dissolve the gold, forming chloroauric acid. First thing we'll do is add a couple 100 milliliters of muriatic acid, otherwise known as hydrochloric acid. And once we have that in, we're going to add our nitric acid, which forms the Aqua Regia. This much gold fingers, I expect between 2.5 and 3.5 grams. It's always hard to say exactly where that lands, but because they're gold files and they dissolve really easily, we're going to go ahead and put in just 2 milliliters of nitric acid, and we can add more if we think there is a need for it. But for now, we're going to start conservatively so we don't have a lot of extra. And then, although there shouldn't be any lead in ram fingers from modern ram sticks, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of sulfuric acid just in case something came through somewhere. This will precipitate any lead out as lead sulfide before we go to drop the gold, so that we don't have that impurity going forward. So we'll go ahead and cover this and let the Aqua Regia do its thing. So all the gold foils have dissolved. We have a fair amount of sediment, fiberglass dust basically in solution. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to filter this Aqua Regia out. At this point, it's chloroauric acid, not Aqua Regia anymore. We're going to go ahead and filter this out till we get a crystal clear solution. So we did our filter flask. Again, we'll get our vacuum pump, our filter, and funnel that goes with it. Set up, get this in there. You see we're filtering it through. You can already see it's fairly cloudy still underneath. So we're certainly going to filter this at least one more time. We want a crystal clear solution when we drop the gold. We don't want any of that gunk coming in with our gold, contaminating it when we try to recover it. You can see we had a lot of junk that came out of there, but certainly some stuff came through because it is a murky solution still. So we'll go ahead and take this, we're going to put it back into a clean beaker. You can see, yeah, some of that stuff's still in here, so we're going to get this rinsed out, get all the gold bearing solution rinsed out, and then get ourselves a clean beaker to continue the process of filtering. All right, so we've got our clean beaker. Set up again, and we're going to filter this one more time. Okay, I can see it coming through again. It's still got some cloudiness to it. Looks like we're gonna have to filter at least one more time. You can see it captured an awful lot of junk in the filter paper there, but that is nowhere near crystal clear. So we're gonna rinse and repeat, do this over again. Not sure what's up with this solution. It actually took me 5 filters to get it to a crystal clear state, but here we are, it's ready to go. So we're going to grab our SMB and we're going to put some spoonfuls of this in here until we see that characteristic color change. We're going to go a little bit at a time because we don't want to overdo it. It doesn't hurt anything if you do. It's very soluble in water. It will come right out in a rinse, but still, you can see we're starting to get some color change. Go ahead and give this a stir, get some of the stuff that hasn't reacted sitting on the bottom stirred in. And there you go. You can see that changes. So we'll do a stannous chloride test. Make sure we've got all the gold out of solution. Put it on the filter paper, drop stannous, and that change in color tells me that there is still gold in solution. So we're going to go ahead and add a little more SMB. Stir that in and give it another test and see where we stand. This time we have no reaction, so all the gold is dropped out of solution. So we'll go ahead and cover that and let it settle down to the bottom before we then decant and wash the gold powder. So for our washing, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the solution down here. We're going to pour off the liquid into our temporary waste container. Set that aside, and then we can see we've got our gold powder here in the bottom of the beaker. We'll go ahead and do some distilled water rinses. And then we're going to transfer this to a smaller beaker. It's just easier to work with. Let that settle. Now we're going to go ahead and add about 100 milliliters of muriatic acid. We're going to put this back up on the heat, cover it up, and do a HCl boil. So it's been boiling for about 5 minutes. We're going to pull it down, rinse everything down back into the beaker, and then continue our process of doing some distilled water washes before we place the gold back up on the worm burner to dry. Going to take our dry gold powder and put it in our melt dish. You can see it there. So we'll dump it in here. It's not a lot. It's probably right in that, I'd say 2.5, maybe a little bit more. We're going to brush out every last grain we can get, see what kind of yield we can end up with. So there's our button. Let it cool for a moment. Go ahead and quench it in the water over here. We have ourselves a nice little gold button. See what it comes up with. And so for 543 grams of trimmed RAM fingers from server memory, we have a nice little button that is going to be worth, or come in at 2.61 grams. So that's not too bad. So 2.61 grams of gold, that's worth $275. It's free gold for me, save money for them. Well, that'll wrap up this video. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, please feel free to subscribe, like, or share. And of course, comments are always welcome. Thank you.